Welcome to the Here We Grow podcast, the podcast dedicated to encouraging and nourishing our lives. Also gives me an excuse to hang out with my buddy Dante. How you doing today, Dante?
I'm doing all right. How about you, Pastor?
I'm doing awesome. I'm Justin. I'm your host today, and we're excited because we get to talk about boldness today. So that's going to be fun. So, what kind of fun stuff did you do today, Dante?
Today was a good work day. I got up very early and did a whole bunch of meetings.
Nice.
Which are classic stuff. And it was better than yesterday's meetings. Yesterday's meetings was about how people can relieve my stress, because I guess it's gone around that I'm very stressed out at the office because I work all manner of the day and night. And so I said, that's, it's a combination of things, but part of it is just my personality. If something needs to be get done, I'm going to try to get it done, regardless of how things work out. So this meeting was more like, what are we doing for our demonstration? And I noticed that like a bunch of things didn't go right, and so my stress level went through the roof again.
Oh, no.
But it was good. It was fine. It was a fine day. I got all my work done before we went to men's group today, and
nice.
So I could be on the podcast just in case.
There you go.
I could be the sub in. I had to put on the jersey.
That's awesome. I just watched the movie on what's that guy's name from Apple?
Steve Jobs?
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, I just watched the movie on that. Is it called Steve Jobs or whatever?
There's two of them.
Oh,
which one?
The one with
Ashton Kutcher or the Magneto?
Yeah, Magneto. Yeah, that one. What is that guy's name? I can't remember. But anyway, I just watched that. So I was just thinking when you said that, like, stress from the demonstration not working, and I'm like, it didn't say hello. It has to say hello.
I guess I'm not at that level yet.
No, not quite. Okay. No. Well, that's good. But I'm right there with you, man, in those kinds of stresses. And I don't know if it's just a male thing to do, but I have a hard time like being interrupted in the middle of something that I need to get finished. I'm right there with you. So recently, with all of our church launch stuff that we're doing for the launch of Living Stones Church, there's been so many things I need to get done, and yet I still need to be a good dad and a good husband and a good friend to people. And it's tough, like, right when you're in the middle of designing something or organizing something or putting something together, and all of a sudden getting this interruption. But sometimes those interruptions are important, right? When you're thinking especially about family. Like for me, I try to remember in that moment. It's still hard because, don't get me wrong, like I really want to finish. Like I want to get whatever I'm doing finished so that I can be finished and be done with it. Yet when my son walks in the room and he's like, "Dad, can we go play?" And I'm like, no, I got to get this finished,
right.
But then I'm sitting there for the next 10 minutes while I'm working on it thinking, someday he's going to be 18 and not here to ask me to go play with him, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to think about this moment, And so how important it is to pause, right? And to keep that perspective. But it's hard. It's hard. I'm right there with you, man. The work has to get done. It's got to get done by somebody. I'm not sure what direction we're going to go tonight with these things, but one of the things I think about with that is like what can only you do, and one of the things where I've had people like talking to me or reading books or listening to other podcasts and things like that, when I would think about my job, it's like putting your hand in a bucket of water. When you pull your hand out of the bucket of water, it's almost like your hand was never there. And I think about any job I've ever had. They're not missing me right now because someone else is doing my job.
Right.
But when I think about my kids and my wife, if I'm not there, they're missing me. There's a hole that was left in that spot instead of like a bucket of water. And so maybe as a word of encouragement to our listeners and things like that, if you're working too hard, and Dante, you could probably agree with me on this, is make sure that you're making an imprint where it matters and not putting so much effort into things that could be done by somebody else.
Agreed. I guess I follow my dad's. My dad was also a programmer. I mean, well, he is still, but I mean, he was a programmer, and he worked in LA, and we lived, as LA. Living in LA got more and more expensive. You start going further and further out. So eventually he lived about 3 hours. We lived about 3 hours out with traffic from LA. And he would go, every morning to work, and then he would come home and he would eat dinner, and then he would play basketball with me or like do some sort of activity with me. He had that energy to do that, and somehow that still eludes me, even though I work from home. The energy to do all that.
I know. Right?
I mean, that's my baseline, and my dad, I feel, was an amazing dad, and so that's always my baseline. And if I feel like I'm not hitting that baseline where my kids see me and they get to do an activity with me, then I feel like I failed as a dad today, and I need to do better tomorrow. And sometimes, because within that, like yesterday, I was saying, you know what, I'm going to take my daughter to her drum lesson. And so I took her to the drum lesson. It's not something she's totally enthused about doing. She's gotten quite good at it, but that's just sheerly out of that she's talented and consistency. Like you just go, you're just going to get better because you just keep going over over.
Yeah.
And so she's been going, her mom's been taking her. God bless. My wife has been a wife of Proverbs 31 for,
you got a pretty awesome bride, bro.
Yes. Agreed. Concur. And so I went and took her, and the effort that she was giving with her drum, not that she was doing something easy, but like I was just like, wow, she's not really putting much effort, but she's still kind of able to do it, but like she's not listening to her teacher, and she's kind of making excuses of why she can't do certain simple things. And so I got upset. I was like, I see you give effort in everything you do when you love it, especially when money's coming, because that's my daughter. She's gonna, if there's a way to make
Driven
a dollar
by
out
reward.
of it, she's gonna get it. And so I said, I was upset. I was like, hey, you know what, you need to give this effort regardless. Like if you love it or you don't love it, you still need to give an effort, because like otherwise, I guess when I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't want her to settle for being mediocre or mediocrity in anything that she does. I'm not, and I told her, I'm not asking you to be Keith Moon, and she had no idea who that was.
I don't know who that is.
Or John Bonham. I'm not asking you to be like any of those people. Dave Grohl. I'm not. Don't be any of them. I'm just saying, please do your best, and whatever happens from there happens. But just don't settle for being mediocre. And I think a lot of that came from when I was a kid. My dad was like my basketball coach, and he was my karate instructor. So giving a half-hearted effort would get a pretty stern lecture immediately, like ones that I still remember to this day. And so I try not to be that like that, because I didn't feel very good about it at the time as a son, and I definitely didn't feel great about telling my kids that as a dad. But at the same time, it did affect how I am as a person.
Totally. You got to learn that excellence, right? And we all grow up differently, and some of us with more stricter parents or with higher expectations. And but I think ultimately learning a good work ethic, especially as a kid, as you set that as a standard, there's something that in you that you take into adulthood that excellence becomes the standard. And when you take excellence into anything you do, right? So we have in our listeners, I'm sure we have business owners, we have different mindsets, professionals, maybe some students are listening, whatever you're doing, if you put excellence as the standard, all of a sudden you're going to see that when you're going through life, when you're going through life's things, if you put excellence as a standard, you're going to get the best results you possibly can. And that is a win in and of itself. So I'm definitely not against being strict and having those things, but man, and setting that excellence as the bar of anything you do. I had a business coach in my life one time. He said, how are things going at work, right? And so he and I did business together. So honestly, I hated my job. Like I was like, oh my gosh, all I want to do is be an entrepreneur. I don't want to be at my job anymore. And he said, well, let me ask you something. Do you think you can change gears of excellence, but give your half-hearted effort to your job and then be excellent in your business? I was like, well, I guess not. And he's like, that's exactly right. You're either firing on all cylinders or you're not. Right. He said, so you're going to either be an excellent dad, an excellent husband, an excellent business owner, an excellent employee, or you're going to be a turd. and that's up to you. And I was just like, oh man, it was a wake up call. Like, I'm not going to compartmentalize success. I'm either a successful person or I am a turd. And so it was one of those like aha moments of, you know what? I'm going to be excellent in everything I do. I'm going to be an excellent employee, an excellent dad, an excellent husband, an excellent business owner, and rock and roll. Now I get to be an excellent pastor, right? So it's all fun in every area of life, but excellence is a standard, and yet grace is the word, right? So we set excellence as a standard. When people don't meet excellence, we give them grace. That's the rest of it. So it's such a fun thing.
Yeah, giving grace to others much easier than giving grace to ourselves. For that, right?
That's so true. That's so true. And as we're talking about boldness today, that kind of goes into it too. Boldness is something you probably grow into more so than you just have, right?
Agreed.
I think we meet people sometimes and we're like, oh man, that guy or that lady, they're really bold, right? And Dante, how would you define boldness? What does boldness mean to you?
To me, it means not being afraid to speak out whatever. Well, that comes from my dad again. My dad is not afraid to speak what's on his mind.
There you go.
For better or worse, you'll hear it. And so that's my definition of bold.
Oh, that's good. And I would agree with that. And I think there's, a lot of people are bold in one direction or another, and I don't think any of them are right or wrong. But boldness in and of itself, especially as Christians, right? As Christ followers, there's something about boldness. And if you really believe what you say you believe, then boldness should be a byproduct, right? It almost shouldn't be something that we have to practice, yet it is. It is something we have to practice because boldness takes stepping out. And if you haven't stepped out before, stepping out is scary. And I think for a lot of our listeners, probably going out and being bold about your faith and sharing with someone, I think it can be distorted. All of a sudden, boldness becomes like being this obnoxious person that you're trying to tell and inflict your beliefs on other people. And I would say that that's not boldness at all. Honestly, I'd say that's probably cowardice, that you're really afraid to share your faith, so you start to force your faith on other people. Boldness, in my opinion, is being able to say, like, this is who God is to me and what he's done in my life. That takes relationship. Right. And that's way different than just reading the Bible and being able to quote it, So we were talking earlier today, and you were sharing a story about some boldness in college. Why don't you share that with our listeners? I thought that was a pretty good one, and I think a lot of us can relate.
It wasn't a story of boldness. It was a story of the lack thereof boldness.
Hey, we all start somewhere. Come on.
It starts kind of with my older brother. My older brother became a Christian when he was in college, so about the same time in life I did. And that dude's like my idol, my brother. And so when I came to college, I came from LA to San Diego. He lived in Carlsbad, and he introduced me to the campus minister at the time, a gentleman named Benoni, like really big dude, had a funny laugh, and he was like a really kind dude, but
That's
like
cool.
he could legitimately crush. He was a wrestler, so he could legitimately crush anybody.
Come on.
And he was hilarious because if he didn't agree with you, he was big enough to do something about it. But, the Christian in him, the minister in him would be like, sure. He would just end it and just be like, sure. All right. That
He
happened.
won't give you the people's elbow.
He wouldn't do that. Yeah. He was a kind gentleman for that. And
there you go.
So I ended up being baptized about the end of the first quarter at UCSD, so 1999 when I went. And one of the first things we had to do, we had to go around campus, and I would go with a group of 2 or 3 people, and they would go and invite people to church or share their faith and talk to people. And then every once in a while it would be my turn. They'd be like, hey, Dante, why don't you go and talk to this person? And so and it just happens to be right after you go up to someone had gone up to another person, and it became, you're in college, you're with a bunch of teenagers and early 20s. And so everybody wants to debate on God immediately.
Right.
Everyone's an expert on theology. Everyone's an expert on everything. So it becomes a debate. And I'm thinking, oh my, like, how am I going to talk to this person? I just barely became baptized, and most of the quotes I know are John 3:16, and it's not, or like Genesis.
In the beginning.
I like, I don't know if I'm going to win too many people over with that. Right. So when I would go invite people, I would legitimately just forget the people I was with. Hi, my name is Dante, and this is so yeah, that's how it would look. And then so I would flutter over my words, and some people are kind enough to kind of just stay with the conversation and be like, oh, is this person inviting me to church? And like,
you need help, buddy.
And so then fast forward 20 years essentially, 18 years, because my nephew, who was born when I went to UCSD, is now going to UCSD, my brother's son. And I was asking him, I took him to lunch. I was asking him, so how's campus life? I know you're part of the church. Like, how's it going? Inviting people and stuff. That was one of my things I couldn't do. Yeah. And he was saying, it's not easy, but we go around, we do it. And I said, oh yeah, sometimes all you have to do really is just like go up to them, say, hey, are you doing anything Sunday? We're having a barbecue after service. And I went, oh my God, why did that become so easy all of a sudden? Like, what just happened? And it just took. I think it just took getting out of my own head, essentially. Yeah. Like I wanted to try so hard to be this perfect baptized Christian. Like I wanted it to stay like that forever and
be polished.
And you can't really be polished until you kind of
gone through it.
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, it affected a lot of my faith in the beginning, because as I felt like I was doing this, really badly. I was giving this effort, but it wasn't very good. Like more and more, I would just be like, man, I don't want to like be around these dudes. I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to have to keep talking to people. Like, I just feel, foolish. I feel hypocritical. Like, I'm not a perfect person by any means. So, how am I going to tell this person to like come by? And it hurt a lot in the beginning. And it just, it's something that's, today, now at my age, I would take it into consideration, but I know how to press forward in that. At the time, I didn't, and so like it definitely made it so that I left for a very long period of time.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It can be tough sometimes. It's especially when you're first starting and you're going to talk to people and doing things like that. It can be nerve-wracking. And I know for me, in the beginning, I had such a hard time talking to people. I could not keep a conversation for anything. And there's so many good tools out there, right? One of my favorite books is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and it was written I think in like 1936 or 1938 or something like that, and still one of the best sellers. And that book, just reading through that, helped me to be able to connect with people, which makes it to where when you can connect with someone on common ground, you can take them to higher ground. But the problem is for a lot of Christians is that you're spending so much time trying to convince someone why they should come to higher ground that they never actually want to. So you have to come down to where they are and what they're doing in life and what's going on in their life. And for instance, I have a neighbor who it does not have a relationship with the Lord, and I've spent time just hanging out with him. Like whenever he's out in the front yard or in his garage or whatever, I'll come and talk for a little bit and sit there and talk with him while he's enjoying a beer or whatever, and just talking about life. And it's one of those things where it's over time he started to share more intimate things with me of stuff that's going on in his life, and where he's like, you know what, I don't really believe in God, but if I ever wanted to try, I think I'd come to your church, and that's probably the best compliment you can ever get from somebody. It's like all of a sudden it's just lifestyle evangelism. You are living out your faith. You are not pushing it on anyone. Like, you're just being a real person, talking about real struggles, real life, and all of a sudden they see like, you know what? You're just as imperfect as me, and yet love the Lord, and you're happy and you're joyful, and I see the struggles you go through, right? I saw that your water heater broke and you have cold showers right now, and yet you're still full of joy, or any of those kind of things can happen. And so it's one of those things where as you're living out your life and you're doing these things, it becomes easier and easier. And I remember also as a young guy, trying to have a conversation with somebody I didn't know. It was one of the hardest things. Now it's pretty much just a work of art. It's one of those where it's just like, oh, I can go make a friend out of anyone.
Right.
And it's something you get used to doing. And I kind of want to give some tools for our listeners. One of the tools that I would use is especially when I was trying to think of something to say. Do you ever find like when you're having a conversation with someone, you're like, I don't know what to say next?
Right.
How do I keep this conversation going and not feel awkward, right? And it's I would use this acronym called FORM. And the acronym stands for Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Message. So if I'm talking to someone because I want to share a message with them, the way to getting to that message is first talking about their family, because everyone will talk about their family. If I ask, are you married? Do you have kids? Where are you from? Where do you live? Where'd you grow up? All of a sudden, I have hours of conversation that can happen just from that one section of topic. Then you can talk about occupation. What do you do for a living? How did you get into that occupation? How long have you been doing it? What is your favorite part about it? What do you dislike about it? All of a sudden, I could have an hour and a half conversation just about occupation or recreation. What do you like to do for fun? Oh my gosh, you like to do this? Oh, I love that too. Let's do this. What do you think about this thing? We should do that sometime.
Hey, that reminds me, Pastor. I've been getting a lot of emails about hockey tickets for the LA Kings and the Anaheim Ducks.
Come on.
I'm not sure how that happened because I've never gone to a game and I've never purchased a ticket from you.
I think it's the Lord. He's telling you need to buy some tickets so that we can go to the game together. I think that's what God's telling to tell you, So anyways, or maybe we just hang out too much and I talk about hockey and your phone picks up on it, So it is what it is. But you've never been to a hockey game?
No.
This whole time?
No,
How
sir.
have you been my friend? I don't understand.
Oh, because I love hockey. I just never been to a game.
Okay. Well, we need to change that this season. It needs to happen like tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
I actually found out recently, I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but thank you for taking my ADD off into another direction.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the Ontario Reign, which is the AHL,
right.
The league right before going into the NHL, they do a family and faith night in February. So I guess we can get some discounted tickets for everybody at church. And so I think we'll hook that up and get a whole bunch of people who've never been to a hockey game.
Nice.
I think it'd be a lot of fun.
So
thanks for bringing that up, Dante. Very, very well done. Very well. But being bold, it comes with having some tools. I think like if you can go into a place, think about boldness as going into battle. If you're going to go battle something out, you're going to go with more confidence if you have the right weapons to go into battle with.
Right.
The same time, like thinking about sports or anything else, like if you're going to go and play a sport, it'd be better if you had the right equipment to go and play the sport with, right?
Right.
And so the same thing is having a conversation for all of our, want to be evangelists one day. The best thing you can do is go and equip yourself with a bunch of tools. Your ability to have form in your pocket. All of a sudden, you're like, I don't know how to talk to this person. I'm so scared out of my mind. What are they going to think? They're going to think I'm weird.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden you say, hi, my name is such and such. Hey, are you from around here? And they go, oh yeah, I'm from this area. Oh, that's crazy. Where do you work at? I feel like I've met you before, like whatever. And you can get a conversation going and all of a sudden you've just made your best friend. And the most fun thing, I went to a Dale Carnegie course through my work one year, and I was the only one in our sales team who had read, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I was like, what? I thought every salesperson had to read this book. I thought that was like prerequisite. And anyways, we went to this Carnegie course, and in the course, they're trying to teach how to have this type of a conversation and dialogue. And we had an odd number of students in the class. So I ended up being the odd man out. So I ended up being with the teacher's assistant, which is somebody who just graduated the class, right? So this person came by as a teacher's assistant, and so I'm partnered with them. So they just went through this class. They know how to have these kind of conversations. All of a sudden, I start talking to this guy, and he's supposed to be teaching me how to ask the right kind of questions to be able to create a connection. Well, he started talking, and he said, what are you interested in? I'm like, oh, I love hockey, and I love motorcycles. He's like, oh, you love motorcycles? I got a motorcycle. Where do you like to ride? And he starts asking me. I was like, oh my gosh, do you like to ride with a group, or do you ride with a passenger? How do you like to do it? What kind of bike do you have? Oh my gosh, is that your dream bike? What's your dream bike? And all of a sudden, we're talking for like the next 15, 20 minutes about all this exciting stuff about him motorcycling, and then they blow the buzzer, and they're like, oh, you guys are done. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I was supposed to help you to be able to have these conversations. I'm like, I don't know if you noticed, but already did. And he's like, oh my gosh, you totally played me, bro. Like this is how you have conversations with people, you know?
Right.
And so anyways, it's one of those things, like I used to tell people, whoever asks the most questions wins. And if you will focus on in a conversation to take interest in the other person, pretend like the other person has a sign around their neck that says, ask me about myself. If you have a conversation with somebody with that kind of mindset, all of a sudden you become a superstar. This person will know nothing about you, but you will be their favorite person that they've ever met in their life.
Right.
Because you asked them everything about them. And I've had fun with that sometimes, just to practice. Like when I talk to different people and I'll be like, they're like, man, you're really cool. I love hanging out with you. I'm like, oh, well, what do you know about me? And that's about the response I get right there. They're like, holy crud, I don't know anything about you. Why are you so cool? Oh, it's because I asked everything about you. Like, because I care about you. That's why you like me. I'm like, oh, okay. Because you're trying to teach people how to be able to connect with other people. And it's an art, and people haven't learned how to do it. So I would definitely suggest getting that book, and it's a good one. It's a doozy. And it'll help you with your boldness. Say you're trying to tell someone about Jesus, right? You want to share with them about Jesus. The way that to be able to warm up the conversation is to talk about family, occupation, recreation, and then get to the message. So the same thing in sales. Like if you're trying to sell a product or something, you can find out what their wants, needs, and desires are based on that form conversation. If they have a family, you're going to know that they're going to hold family values, that those things are going to be important to them. Occupation is going to tell you how much time they have, what kind of money they make, what kind of things that they like to do based on that. And then recreation, what type of person are they? Are they the type of person that's an energetic person, likes to go get things done, or are they like someone who likes to be lazy and relax, right? All of a sudden you learn all these things about them, and depending on what you're trying to sell, you'll be able to see what type of need that would fill their need. If it's something that would help them to relax, or if it's something to help them succeed, you'll be able to tailor your product or service or a conversation around that. So it becomes an art.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, crazy, right?
That was good.
Yeah, some good training on how to talk to people, but it's good for evangelism and also sales if you want to get into sales. If anybody has some questions on those types of things, if you want to, we could probably get some good business owners in here or some good evangelists in here to teach more on how to have a healthy conversation and how to take boldness out into the streets. But here at the Here We Grow podcast, we try to do something once a week of being able to give you a challenge. And so here's my challenge for this week. Invite someone to church. Go out and talk to somebody, invite them to your local church. And how do you do that? Start with form. Try with form. Try to be able to have a conversation with someone you've never had a conversation with and get that to the message of, hey, you seem like a great person. I would love for you to come to church with me someday. We have a whole bunch of great people there. You'd fit right in, right? Something as simple as that, and all of a sudden you're inviting somebody to church. So I would strongly suggest that. And then if anybody has any feedback for us, we would love to hear from you. Please email us at feedback@herewogrowpodcast.com. And as always, you can listen to our podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And please subscribe and don't be afraid to give our podcast 5 stars. We love you, and here we grow.